yeah, when we got the news that Peter Garden couldn't unfortunately present, then I was reading at her title. I was like, oh, but I also researched on this, so I thought to take the chance and bring something in, which is not the same, obviously, of what she would have done, but it's something related and something which fits well in the topic of this conference, because I will try to look at the past, at the present, and at the future. So in the agenda, I will first explain what is transformative, or how I mean transformative, because of this dash, possibly transformative transformation of education. So here maybe Becca, what we have been invited earlier in relation to get an utopian perspective on future. So that would be, maybe will be a transformative transformation of digitalization of the education through digitalization. And the second part, which is the main part actually, it will be about some observation and reflection on this transformation which have been taking place in the last decades. Yeah, so as it is a continuum, I will do it in a discursive way. So will be some memories of the past, some observation of the present, and some speculation of the future. But the speculation part, then we can take it over in the discussion together. So transformative. If you look at the literature, there are many authors that say different things. So I didn't quote any, so that I don't take part of the one or the other perspective, but I try to combine them. Because it has a longer story, and a longer story which connects many different approaches and also pedagogical perspectives on education. And if you look at it, you will see on the one hand people who are using scientists, but also pedagogists, educators who use transformative in a quite individual way. So like thinking of a transformative education as a journey you do in order to become able to cope with society and its complexity and its challenges. So a transformative education would be an education that really helps you to cope with uncertainty, with a complex reality, and to somehow exploit your potential. And though the biggest flow, let's say, of education in relation to transformative education is connected to a bigger vision. So it's not about just having a person who's able to cope in a good way with reality and exploit one's own potential, but it's about creating citizens which cope very well with reality and exploit their potential, but not just for themselves, but for the whole community in a sustainable way. Yeah, so we have here a bunch of balls, of pedagogical theories, and also in general theories. I put, for example, here critical intercultural communication, or critical intercultural education. So going more and more in taking over a perspective which is wider than looking at the simple interaction, which is typical of intercultural communication, for example. Yeah, so setting this into a bigger context and taking also kind of a value perspective of how should reality be and how should we engage as educators, who we are not neutral and shouldn't be neutral, but should be there for ensuring the realization of certain values that permit us as a community to live and permit us as individuals to let other people live and enjoy as much as we do. So now let's go to the bigger part, and that is the digital transformation of education. What I mean here with education is very focused on learning processes. But if we have learning, then we have to think also the teaching part. Yeah, which is not necessarily this traditional teaching. Teachers now meant as an open concept. Yeah, no matter what forms it take. And then obviously if we talk about learn and then for teach, then we need to think about learn to teach Yeah, so this is also considered in our discussion later on also. So in order to talk about digital transformation of education, I brought just a bunch of terms because this bunch of terms are actually not new, have been with us for the last decades. But what is meant with them, it's actually changing the whole time. Yeah, not really their definition, but their realization, yeah, in everyday life of education. So digital learning is kind of the big umbrella. So the use of digital tools and environments to support learning across contexts and modalities. Yeah, this is a big umbrella we will talk about, and that takes different forms. The most famous form, or the most ancient form, I would think it's e-learning as a term, structured learning delivered via electronic media, often platform-based and self-paced. Connected to it very well and also kind of overlapping meaning is the online learning, distance learning. So other words we use often interchangeable with e-learning. But these words put in evidence more the fact that education is mediated entirely by the internet. We can remember e-learning, we could use CDs, for example, and DVD for getting the digital information. So we didn't really need to be online. But online and distance learning, they are actually thinking out of a situation of internet, of digitality, in the sense of being connected through the internet to each other, but also to certain materials, educational materials. So in online distance learning, we are thinking about synchronous learning, but also asynchronous learning. That's not specified. Then we have two terms which are melting more and more together. And there is the blended learning, so phases in presence and phases online. Yeah, that would be classically the blended learning. We have a course, we meet at the beginning and at the end, and in the meanwhile, you go to fora online and other exercises and so on. So that's the typical blended learning, but actually it's changing. And it's useful to understand this change with this small definition here beside: combination of online and offline instructions, synchronous and asynchronous. So we are getting into the synchronous part, and it's not very well specified, and so that it goes into the hybrid. And the hybrid actually at the beginning was meaning was meant as referring to synchronous activity joined by some on site and others online. So you remember maybe with COVID, there was a phase where everyone was online, and then a phase where there were some people there and some people online joining in. So that was a typical example of a hybrid. But by now it's blended with blended learning. So meaning also that it can be hybrid learning, can be also hybrid in the very general sense of having moments online and offline, and some people are there, some people are connected online, and so on. So it is, as always, definition and terms are not precise and fixed forever, but I think it's important to think about them because they put different accents, and also it's interesting to see how they're changing meanings, and maybe in our head they're also changing representations, no? Because we have now doing very different experiences of what is, for example, e-learning and what was e-learning. I put a turquoise line on the left. Turquoise for me, I see maybe with a shirt, is interculturalities, intercultural communication. Not all over it's like that, but for me, in my history at the University of Jena, that's the color we connected to it. And I won't speak about interculturality today very much, but I think it's interesting to reflect shortly about this, because e-learning has been used in many different disciplines, obviously, since many decades, but in the intercultural communication, for example, field was very, very important to use it. And because it permits a connection with people from different countries, for example, and speaking different languages. So it allows to have hybrid contacts, for example, with other people. And I say hybrid contact and not digital, because at that time when not everyone had a laptop with a great connection as it is in most of the places or many places today, then we had classes, for example, all together, physically joining together in a class and connected with another class in another country and trying to exchange and do things together. And today, obviously, hybrid changed. Yeah, we have a hybrid class maybe with the same different students group, but actually everyone has its own laptop, and we can have also direct communication with a single student on the other side of the world. Okay, so now you are wondering maybe why I put this line below, and you see it here. That is a kind of history line. For me, the future is not in front, but on the right side. Today, we'll try to think of it on the left side. So I put, on the one hand, we have a continuum, because history is not the past and then finishes, and then it's the present and then finishes, and then it's the future, but it's a continuum of small changes. And so we have Web 2.0 as a term, this moment of change in which we could much more interact through the internet, for example, using fora. And then we had ChatGPT today. Yeah, I didn't write AI. I wrote ChatGPT because that was for us the first big name that changed the life of many, and also in education, suddenly were new challenges there. And in the between, there is the COVID-19, which gave an absolutely strong impulse to digitality and education. And here above, you still have digital learning with the same definition as the previous slide, but you have here a new word, which is smart learning. It sounds to me super new. And today is everything about smart cities, smart everything, but actually it's not. So for example, you see here I chose a definition from Spector 2014, and he writes more effective, efficient, and engaging on a large and sustainable scale. Yeah, obviously education. Through adaptive systems, AI-based platforms, and data-driven personalization. So now we see AI is not new, but actually it became much easier to use it, much present in our world today. So the question is, how can we create such a more effective, efficient, and engaging learning environments? So what happened actually with COVID? It wasn't creating a very smarter learning environment, but it was actually a digitization of teaching and learning. So digitization is a difference for the ones who are not maybe experts of this English term. There is digitalization, which is more the digital transformation of society, of education in general. Digitization is about like transforming physical things or words into digital bits. Yeah, it's really this technical. And I would use it here, digitization, because actually what was happening in many cases was just like doing what I'm used to do in my class and do it online. Yeah, so I wasn't really rethinking anything. I was just trying to transform myself in digital bits, and my contents also, I was like putting them online and so on. So at the same time, though, COVID actually pushed digitalization in all senses. Now we speak today of post-digitality, so digitalization, the digital cannot be separated from the physical anymore. Yeah, we noticed all in the COVID time, we could absolutely live with some problems, but online. Yeah, we have contacts where, so we cannot separate the digital anymore from the physical. And that means also that we are changing very much because of what of this presence of the digital and what we experience there, and how we do these experiences. So we are changing very much, society is changing very much, and education is changing very much. So more and more enterprises started to offer tools. Zoom is an example. So tools which are useful in different situations, but also very specific tools for education. And more we went in the direction of edutainment. So entertainment in education. So connected also with gamification, for example. And more have been produced educational resources which were at disposal of everyone, and not always open. For this reason, the O is gray, but very often also open educational resources, which we could use without even noticing they were educational resources in many cases. So there was a boom of digital tools, has been a boom of digital tools in the last in the last decade, and above all in the last years. Also the COVID, above all, promoted, also a spread. I don't know if it's a good word, but I'm sure you understand what I mean, a spread of tech equipment. So many people have today a laptop or a tablet at least, and before they didn't even think that they need it. And that was because of this time where otherwise we wouldn't have any contact with the outside or any comfortable contact with the outside. And here meaning also obviously institutions like schools and so on. Here I put the title of the book. Fergal was meaning earlier, life-wide learning post-digital society. So we are, and I put this here to put in evidence that we are changing so much. And here there is an interesting term I brought from Bolton, who's the founder of our department, and he liked to speak about scientification in the sense that gamification of science, and this connected to a bigger thought I want to share with you today, and that is if enterprises, big enterprises who do things really, really cool, because they have the best expert and the most money and so on, are producing great or not great, but fun educational material, then obviously also researchers and lecturers are pushed also to create materials, ideas, educational concepts, which are fine enough that the people take them. Because in some cases, students are obliged to do something, to use something, even if it's not good, because they are obliged inside of our institutional system, but many times they can choose what they use. And so here it's super important that the source, the creator of this educational material, of these digital tools, is a person who is sensitive in relation to many topics which are so important for a transformative education. So before coming here, I would, deepening into it, I would then insert a new concept, not a new concept, but a concept I would like to stress its importance, which is digital pedagogy. So studying more and more, how can we have good education using digital tools and digital materials, open educational resources, and so on, in a very conscious, reflective, and I would say also critical way. And this connects to a big question we are questioning in educational science and in society in general. So what is education actually today about? What should it be about? We are living in a knowledge society. So, and we are also living in an age of polycrisis. So what should education be about? And here, I would say that in the discourse, at least in science, there is a change in focus from the contents into competencies. And that means that digital tools are more and more used for creating concepts which make people participate. So students participate in a very active way, creative way, interacting with each other. So the hope is that they develop key skills for coping with uncertainty. So, and here, you remember the line I showed you at the beginning, the turquoise line saying that was great, digitality opened us the door of the world and we could put students together from different countries. And that was, intercultural communication was much about that. But today there is more and more the consciousness that interculturality is about the encounter with the unfamiliar, with this uncertainty. Yeah, today was already the topic about uncertainty. So the proposal of a former speaker today was like, let's just stay with it. Yeah, and here we are working the same direction. So yeah, let's stay with it and learn how to cope with it in a positive and constructive way. So what does it mean for learning? It means that learning becomes more and more also an unconscious process. An unconscious process that with AI, for example, we get slowly a personal assistant, a teaching avatar. So in this sense, the question is, how can we make sure that we learn, and that's an open question for you, that we learn to cope in a critical and a conscious and way, with these tools, with this knowledge, how can we make sure that the education we offer to young people is an education which help them to create a sustainable society in this how do you say tension between technology which helps us to do great things, and at the same time technology which has so powerful and can change the direction of the contents which are, for example, and the competences which are promoted. And so there, I think the trick is a bit to work also, to focus also on training teacher to learn in this context of uncertainty, complexity, and digitalized. And that is the logo of a project I'm working with Selina Bauserwein, who's also here today. And here the question that we are trying to go with is how to help teachers to get the skills to use digitalization for having great education in sense of inclusive, participatory, emancipatory, critical education. And we started with the idea of creating some classical multimedia module, very cool, but there is so much already. And then now we are going into, okay, let's create a co-teacher, a DG co-teacher, which is always with you and supports you in the different moments. So that is now where I am with my head, and I'm seeing the challenges that are connected with it and are connected with the presentations we had before. So here is a screenshot of two different presenters. Now here we have AI eating the world. So AI, for example, I'm thinking of creating a great AI, but how much can I control it really? How much do I succeed in creating a great product which is comparable in its quality with commercial ones? And why is that important? That as a researcher, I have this power to do something great instead of a tech enterprise. Yeah, and here is the answer a bit that Freya van den Booms gave today, over reliance on AI, misinformation, and so on. So this is shortly the bibliography I was referring to. And here, I thank you very much for your attention and the upcoming discussion.